Maybe it was him. Maybe it was me. Or maybe it was just the air between us finally collapsing after holding too much for too long. All I knew was that suddenly, he was standing in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his skin, close enough that I could see the faint rise and fall of his chest. He wasn't touching me, but God, it felt like he was. "Why were you looking for me?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. His jaw flexed. "I didn't come back here for my bag," he repeated quietly. "I came back because I couldn't leave like that." "Like what?" He hesitated. A long, heavy silence settled between us, too heavy, too fragile, ready to snap. "You left so quickly earlier today," he said. "During the project meeting. You didn't even look at me when you walked out." My heart stuttered. "I didn't think it mattered." "It does," he said, stepping closer. To me. Something inside me twisted sharply. I had been trying so hard to bury what I felt, pushing it down, hiding it beneath fake indifference and forced distance. Yet here he was, dragging it into the open without warning. Without giving me time to breathe. "Adil, what are you saying?" I whispered. He looked down at the floor for a moment, then back at me. His eyes were darker than I'd ever seen them, full of things I wasn't sure he was ready to say, and things I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just know that when you walked out today, it felt wrong. Like something between us was unfinished." A soft sound echoed from somewhere in the hallway, like a faint scrape along the wall. We both flinched, but neither of us turned toward the door this time. Whatever was happening in the building felt distant now. Secondary, the real noise, the real danger, was happening right here, inside my chest. "You shouldn't say things like that," I murmured. "Not if you don't mean them." He exhaled shakily. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't." The room felt like it was spinning. I reached for the back of a chair to steady myself, but Adil stepped forward quickly, his hand brushing my wrist. The contact was brief, barely a second, but it sent a jolt through me so sharp I nearly pulled away. He didn't grab me. He just let his fingers rest there, uncertain, trembling, waiting. "Can I ask you something?" he said softly. I nodded, though my throat was dry. "When you walked away earlier, did you avoid looking at me because you were upset?" His voice dropped. "Or because you felt something you didn't want to feel?" I froze. Everything inside me tightened, terror, longing, confusion, guilt, all tangled into one impossible knot. I knew what he was asking. I knew what he meant. I knew what he was afraid to say outright, and maybe he already knew the answer. "I don't know what I feel," I whispered, liar. The word hit like a spark. I looked up sharply. "What did you just—" "You know exactly what you feel," he said, not unkindly. "I see it every time you look at me. Every time you avoid looking at me. Every time you leave the room the second things get too quiet." The accusation wasn't angry. It was soft. Almost pleading. "Adil, you don't know what's going on inside my head." "Then tell me," he said. "Tell me so I don't keep guessing." His hand was still on my wrist, light but firm, as if he was afraid I would disappear. His eyes were searching mine with a desperation I had never seen on him before. The confident, unshakable Adil was gone. In his place stood someone raw, vulnerable, scared of what might happen if he stepped forward, but even more scared of what might happen if he didn't. "Adil," I breathed, "we're supposed to be friends." "Do you want to be only friends?" he whispered. A dull ringing filled my ears. The question struck deeper than it should have. It cracked something inside me that I'd spent years trying to keep sealed. My instinct was to step back, to run, to shut down before I said something I couldn't take back. But he pulled me gently toward him, not enough to trap me, just enough to keep me from retreating into myself. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said quietly. "I'm not afraid of you," I said. "I'm afraid of everything else." He swallowed. "So am I." Another sound echoed down the hallway, louder this time, unmistakably deliberate. A slow, dragging footstep. Then another. Closer. We both whipped our heads toward the door this time. The fear returned full force. Adil's hand tightened slightly on my wrist. Not in panic, more like instinct. Protection. "Reflex, whoever that is," he whispered. "They shouldn't be here." His voice trembled, not because of fear, but because of realization. Understanding. The first time he'd spoken to me in the bathroom, he'd been tense. But now, he was scared not just of the footsteps, but of what would happen if we had to confront whatever was outside together. Maybe it's just a janitor, I said, though I didn't believe it. No janitor walks like that. The footsteps grew louder. 3 slow steps, pause. 2 more pause, then silence. A heavy, thick silence that wrapped around our throats. Adil stepped in front of me slightly, positioning himself closer to the door. Stay behind me. Adil, no, it's fine, he said, though it didn't sound convincing. He took another step toward the door, and the light flickered violently once. Twice. Then plunged the entire room into darkness. I felt him inhale sharply beside me. Adil. I whispered. No answer. A hand brushed mine. I grabbed it instinctively, too tightly, too scared to pretend otherwise, but then, another hand touched my shoulder. Not his. Cold. Too cold, too still. The breath left my chest in a rush. Adil, someone's here, I whispered, panicked. He tightened his grip on my other hand. Don't move, he breathed. We were trapped in a dark classroom, holding onto each other with someone else, some presence, standing close enough to touch. The lights flickered back on, dim, shaky, but no one was there, just me and Adil still standing inches away, still holding onto me like letting go might break something neither of us could fix. His chest rose and fell fast, uneven. His eyes were wide, not with fear, but with something else. Something electric. Something dangerous. The lights flickered again. He stepped closer, voice barely audible. Tell me you didn't feel that. I did. Tell me I'm not imagining this. You're not. His hand slipped from my wrist to the side of my face, hesitant, trembling, scared of itself. Then tell me, he whispered, why the hell it feels like losing you would be scarier than anything in this building. My heart stopped because I didn't have an answer, because maybe he was right, because maybe that was the real danger all along. If you want, I can continue with the falling action, 600 to 800 words, next, keeping the tension, fear, and unresolved emotional pull between them. Just the soft hum of streetlights outside my window and the faint scent of rain that never quite touched the ground. I remember staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of a life that felt too predictable, like every day was a page someone else had already written for me, and then he walked back into it. I didn't hear the door at first. Only the shift in the air, a quiet disturbance, like the room itself exhaled after holding its breath too long. When I looked up, he was standing there, silhouetted against the hallway light, shoulders tense, eyes searching for something I couldn't name yet. He said my name softly, almost like he wasn't sure he was allowed to. A strange flutter rose in my chest, the kind I'd buried years ago. I thought I'd locked it away. I thought I'd buried it deep enough to forget. But desire has a memory of its own, one that doesn't need permission to return. What are you doing here? I asked, though the real question was why now? Why me? Why again? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked into the room with slow, careful steps, as if one wrong move might shatter whatever fragile thread still connected us. I watched his hands, the way his fingers curled and uncurled like he was preparing himself for something heavy. Something honest. I didn't know where else to go, he finally said, and that was all it took. A simple sentence. A quiet confession. A door I thought I'd closed forever swinging open again. My pulse quickened. I hated how easily he pulled me back into his gravity, how just being near him stirred memories I'd spent years convincing myself weren't real, weren't important, weren't dangerous, but there he was, and suddenly, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. He sat on the edge of my bed, his shoulders slightly hunched, his breath uneven. I could feel the tension radiating off him, a quiet storm he was fighting to contain. I wanted to reach out, God, I wanted to, but my hand stayed frozen in my lap, caught between longing and fear. Don't do this, I told myself. Don't go back to the place that broke you, but my heart didn't listen. Are you okay? I whispered. He looked up, and in that moment his eyes held something raw, something I had never seen in him before. Vulnerability. Regret. Maybe even hope. I don't know, he said. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, electric, alive in a way that felt almost dangerous. I suddenly realized the night wasn't ordinary at all. It was the beginning of something I wasn't ready for, something I couldn't stop even if I tried, and as he finally met my gaze, something shifted between us, something impossible to ignore, something that would change everything. If you want, I can now continue with the white heavy checkmark 1 visual prompt for each section. White heavy checkmark title plus description plus hashtags. White heavy checkmark thumbnail image prompt. Just say continue. His hand was still on my face, warm, trembling, unsure. And everything inside me felt like it was collapsing into itself, folding tight around a truth I wasn't ready to name. The lights buzzed softly overhead, flickering just enough to make the shadows twitch along the cracked classroom walls. "Adil," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I meant it as a warning or a plea. He didn't answer. He just stared at me, like the world outside didn't exist, like the footsteps, the darkness, the cold hand on my shoulder had all been swallowed by the space between us. His thumb brushed my cheek, so lightly it could have been an accident, except it wasn't. He meant it. I felt the realization sink deep, heavy and terrifying. He meant it. "Tell me to step back," he murmured. The low sound of his voice sent a strange, dizzy tremor through my chest. I opened my mouth, whether to tell him to stop or to stay, I didn't know, but another sound cracked through the hallway outside. A sharp, hollow bang. We both jumped. His hand dropped away from my face immediately, like he'd been burned. The sudden loss of warmth made my skin ache in a way I didn't want to admit. He stepped back, breathing hard, anger and fear flickering across his face in quick, tangled flashes. "Someone's messing with us," he said, voice tight. "Has to be." But there was doubt, thick, unmistakable doubt, beneath every word. I forced myself to steady my breath. "We should leave." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before stopping near the door. Yeah, we should." But he cut himself off, looking at me again. "Just stay close." Stay close. 2 words that shouldn't have meant anything, but they did. The hallway outside was dimmer than before, as if the lights had lost some of their strength. Our footsteps echoed too loudly, bouncing off the walls like whispers we couldn't quite catch. "Do you think someone's still here?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer at first. His jaw clenched, scanning the shadows ahead. "I don't know," he said. "But I don't like how it feels." Neither did I. We reached the stairwell, and the moment we stepped inside, a cold draft swept past us. Not natural cold, this was sharper, deliberate, like someone had exhaled right beside my ear. I shivered. Adil instantly reached for my arm, out of instinct, not thought, his fingers wrapping around my sleeve. He froze afterward, realizing what he'd done. "Sorry," he muttered, pulling back slightly. "I didn't mean, it's okay," I said quickly, too quickly. His shoulders loosened, but just barely. We continued down the stairs, but halfway down the second flight, Adil stopped abruptly. I nearly walked into him. "What?" He pointed. A single sheet of paper lay on the step below us, our project paper, the one that had been scattered across the desk upstairs, except now it had writing on it. I swallowed hard. A shaky sentence scribbled across the margin read, "He shouldn't be here." My chest constricted. "Adil, someone wrote that." His eyes darkened, fear twisting into something that looked dangerously like anger. "Whoever's doing this needs to stop." But the words felt empty, powerless, because we both knew this wasn't a prank, this wasn't random, and neither of us wanted to admit what was becoming obvious. Someone was watching us, watching him, watching me, watching us. He crouched to pick up the paper, his hand shaking slightly. When he stood again, he didn't look at me right away. When he finally did, something had changed in his expression. A mix of guilt, protectiveness, and something painfully vulnerable. "We shouldn't have stayed," he said quietly. "Not tonight." He took a breath, then added, barely audible, "Not when things between us are already confusing." My stomach twisted. "Adil, no," he interrupted softly, shaking his head. "Don't say anything. Not right now." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, heavy, charged with all the words neither of us knew how to say without breaking something fragile. We stepped off the last stair and into the lobby. The exit door was only a few feet away, freedom, safety, clarity, all within reach. But Adil suddenly stopped again. One hand on the door, the other clenched around the sheet of paper. He didn't open it. He didn't move. He just whispered, "Before we walk out, tell me something." My pulse spiked. "What?" He turned slightly, not enough for me to see his full expression, just enough for me to hear the strain in his voice. "If what almost happened, happens again, what are you going to do?" My breath hitched. I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I had one. I was too afraid to speak. He didn't push. He didn't look back. He just exhaled, shaky, unsure, and opened the door. Cold air rushed in, but the real chill came from the question hanging between us, unanswered, trembling, waiting to pull everything apart later. And as we stepped out into the foggy night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something important had shifted. Between us, behind us, around us, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was going back to normal, if you want. I can now write the conclusion, cliffhanger, 400 to 600 words, next, keeping the suspense, emotional tension, and unresolved danger. A forbidden workplace romance, boss-employee, best friend's older brother, rival to lover, tension, a secret relationship, a dramatic misunderstanding, a moment where feelings explode unexpectedly, an almost kiss that shouldn't happen, ORB. A non-taboo, purely dramatic, shocking moment, also allowed. Examples: an unexpected confession, a sudden emotional breakdown, a secret from the past revealed, a surprise return of an ex, a fight that turns into intimacy. Sparkles. Both options. Let me write the climax, 800 to 1,200 words, falling action, 600 to 800, and cliffhanger, 400 to 600. Exactly in the style you want, slow, emotional, vivid, suspenseful. Just tell me A or B, and if you want, you can name the characters too. The campus was unusually quiet for a weekday, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel watched even when you know you're alone. A thin fog hung over the courtyard, softening the glow of the lampposts as I walked across the empty lawn toward the old humanities building. I told myself it was just another late study night, but something felt off. Maybe it was the way the air smelled, like rain and metal, or how every sound seemed to echo longer than it should have. Or maybe it was just me. I'd been on edge for weeks, though I couldn't explain why. I pushed open the building's heavy wooden door and slipped inside. The hallway hummed with the low buzz of old fluorescent lights. My footsteps sounded impossibly loud on the polished floor. Every classroom was dark except one, room 204, where the door was cracked open, a single lamp glowing inside. That was where I left my bag earlier during a group project session, and where he had been. Adil.my classmate. My friend. And lately, the person I couldn't stop noticing, no matter how hard I pretended not to. His laugh still echoed in my head, the warm, careless kind that always seemed to show up when he leaned a little too close. He was confident without trying, charming without knowing. The type of guy people naturally drifted toward. The type I tried incredibly hard not to stare at. I hated that about myself. Or maybe I hated that I couldn't hide it as well as I thought. The building's bathroom sat at the end of the corridor, where the lights flickered more than they stayed on. I pushed inside, letting the door swing shut behind me. The silence pressed in on me like a weight. I took a breath, trying to shake off the strange feeling creeping down my spine. It should have been a normal moment. Just me, in a quiet bathroom, washing my face before heading back to finish my notes, but then I noticed it. One of the stall doors, slightly ajar, swaying gently. I froze. I hadn't seen anyone else come in. A soft tap sounded behind me. Not loud, but sharp enough to send a jolt through my chest. I turned slowly, my pulse thudding in my ears. The door had opened. A familiar silhouette stepped inside, the hallway light outlining his shoulders before the door eased shut again. Adil. He stood there, breathing a little too hard, eyes darker than usual. His gaze locked onto mine like he had been searching for me, or avoiding something outside, or maybe both. My heartbeat quickened, part fear, part something I didn't want to name. He didn't say a word, just took one step forward, then another, and in that small, dim bathroom, with the hum of the lights overhead and the fog still clinging to the windows, I suddenly realized he wasn't supposed to be here. So why was he, and why? Did it feel like everything was about to change? The bathroom felt too small, the air too still. The only sound was the faint, uneven hum of the fluorescent light above us. Adil's eye stayed fixed on mine, steady, unreadable, almost unnervingly calm. But there was something else there too, something I couldn't place. Something that made my throat tighten. He took another step closer. Didn't think anyone else was still here, he said finally. His voice was low, rough around the edges, like he'd been running or arguing with someone before coming in. I forced a laugh. Yeah, just grabbing my bag and heading out. That's what I came back for too, he muttered, though his eyes flickered, like he hadn't come back just for that. A strange tension coiled between us, thin but sharp, pulling tight in the silence. I leaned back slightly, trying to hide the sudden rush of heat crawling up my neck. You scared me. I thought the building was empty. His lips twitched, not a smile, not really. More like he was trying to keep one from forming. Sorry. I didn't mean to sneak up on you. But something about the way he said that made it sound like he wasn't sorry at all. I turned toward the sink to wash my hands, hoping the cool water would settle my heartbeat. But I could feel him behind me, the faint warmth of his presence filling the space even though he wasn't touching me. It was ridiculous, how aware I was of every move he made. You okay? He asked softly. The question caught me off guard. I looked at him in the mirror. His expression had shifted, no longer unreadable, but strangely concerned. I'm fine, I said. Why? He shrugged, though the movement looked forced. You seem distracted. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Distracted? I'd spent the last month trying, failing, to not be distracted by him. By the way he leaned too close when we studied together. By the way he laughed at things that weren't funny. By the way his hand lingered a little too long when he passed me a pen. But none of that was something I could say out loud. Before I could respond, a loud metallic thud sounded from the hallway. We both tensed. The noise echoed like something heavy falling, or being dropped. The building was old, sounds carried strangely. But this one felt deliberate. Adil turned his head sharply toward the door. What was that? I don't know, I whispered. For a split second. Neither of us breathed. Then another sound followed, quieter this time, like faint footsteps. Slow. Uneven. Too slow to be normal. My stomach twisted. A joke formed on the edge of my tongue, something about ghosts or janitors working late, but it died before I could say it. Something about the sound didn't feel right. Adil stepped closer to me, his shoulder nearly brushing mine. Stay here, he murmured. What? Why? But he was already moving toward the bathroom door. I reached out instinctively, my fingers brushing his forearm. His skin was warm, his breath hitched almost imperceptibly at the contact. Don't, I said. We don't know what it is. His gaze dropped to my hand on his arm. His jaw tightened, not annoyed, not angry. Something else. Something that sent a flicker of heat through my chest. I'll just look, he said quietly. 2 seconds. He slipped out before I could protest. The door swung shut behind him, leaving me alone, and suddenly the bathroom felt endless. I stood there, forcing slow breaths, listening to the echo of his footsteps fade in the hallway. Every second he was gone stretched unnaturally long, like the building itself was holding its breath with me. What if it was nothing? What if it was something? Why was he even here this late? Questions swarmed my head, but none settled. Another minute passed, then 2. My chest tightened. I pushed open the bathroom door, slowly at first, then faster when I realized how quiet the hallway had become. Adil. I called softly. No answer. I stepped out, the cold floor shocking against my shoes. The hallway lights flickered once, twice, then steadied, though the brightness felt duller now, like they were struggling to stay on. I peered down the corridor toward room 204. The classroom door was still open. His silhouette wasn't in sight. Adil. I repeated, louder this time. Again, nothing. A knot tightened in my stomach. I started walking, the building around me feeling different now. Heavier. As if shadows clung to the corners that had been empty moments ago. When I reached the open classroom, I hesitated. The lamp inside was on, casting a soft yellow glow across the scattered desks. My bag lay on the floor exactly where I left it. But something was off. A chair was overturned near the window. Papers were strewn across one desk, papers that hadn't been there earlier, and on the far end of the room, near the back row, stood Adil. His back was turned to me. He didn't move when I stepped inside. Hey, I said carefully. You scared me. What happened? No response. Adil. He turned slowly, too slowly, and I felt a chill run through me. His face wasn't angry or frightened. It was blank. Completely blank, like he wasn't sure what he'd just seen. Or maybe, what he'd just done. What happened? I whispered again. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His eyes flickered toward the window, then back to me. There was someone here, he said finally. My pulse jumped. Here? In the room. He nodded. I heard them. Saw a shadow move past the door. Are you sure? Yes. He looked shaken. Really shaken. And that scared me more than the noise had. I walked toward him slowly, analyzing the room again. Nothing looked missing, nothing looked damaged, just disturbed, as if someone had been here seconds before we arrived. But why? Adil ran a hand through his hair, pacing once, twice, the tension rolling off him in sharp waves. I don't like this building at night, he muttered. Feels wrong. It's old, I said. Everything echoes. He looked up at me then, really looked, and the intensity in his eyes sent an involuntary shiver through me. You weren't supposed to be here, he said quietly. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words sounded too loaded, their meaning stretching beyond the moment. Neither were you, I managed. He exhaled, a humorless breath. I know. The tension shifted, a subtle change, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. As if whatever had happened in the hallway wasn't the real thing bothering him. I stepped closer. Adil, tell me what's going on. He hesitated, then something broke. Not visibly, not dramatically. Just a tiny crack in the mask he always wore. I didn't come back for my bag, he said suddenly. The confession hung in the air between us. My heartbeat slowed. Then why? I came back because, he swallowed, eyes darting away, because I thought you'd still be here. A cold rush shot through me and a warm one followed. Why? I whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence spoke louder than anything he could have said. The way his eyes flickered to my lips and then away again. The way his hands trembled slightly even though he tried to hide it. The way he stood too close, like he was fighting an urge he didn't trust himself with. The building creaked softly. Another sound echoed in the hallway, farther this time, but still too intentional to ignore. But neither of us moved. The fear that had followed us moments earlier shifted into something else entirely. Something more dangerous. More unpredictable, something that felt like stepping toward the edge of a cliff, knowing you might fall but unable to turn away. Maybe we should go, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. He didn't step back. He didn't agree. He just looked at me like he was seeing something he wasn't supposed to, and wanting it anyway. Do you want to leave? He asked softly. The question wasn't about the building anymore. I felt the answer in my chest before it formed in my throat, and that terrified me more than the footsteps, more than the empty hallway, more than the strange sounds we still couldn't explain, because the real danger wasn't outside. It was right here, inches away, waiting for a choice neither of us was ready to make. I swallowed hard. Adil, I whispered, his eyes locked onto mine. What if leaving, he said quietly, isn't the part we should be afraid of? My breath caught, and in that moment, I wasn't sure if he meant us. Or something else entirely. If you'd like, I can continue with the climactic moment, 800 to 1,200 words, next.